Hey there guys, I am the Six Machine and welcome back to another Warhammer video. Today we are being blessed in more ways than one, considering the god they go on to serve, with the unrelenting, unstoppable advance of the Dusk Raiders, or as you may know them now, the Death Guard. Mortarion's Legion are very much a straight to the point, simple, no nonsense force when it comes to waging war. They don't go in for crazy esoteric weaponry, vehicles or tactics that the other legions use. The Death Guard simply move up, advancing quite often on foot or in simple transports like rhinos, and just overwhelm their enemies in a solid wave of bodies that just never stops coming. That's not to say it's a horde army by any stretch, they are still Astartes of course, but the Death Guard are very much the epitome of a relentless, grinding advance in the Heresy series, I think. And so their Legion rule, remorseless, is a very fitting one to suit their playstyle. And what remorseless does is units in your army with this rule that don't have the cavalry or artillery type, so it's not just infantry but also all of your non-artillery vehicles as well, they get to ignore movement restrictions and modifiers and can also ignore the penalty for pinning. So if your opponent was hoping to bog you down behind some difficult terrain or some pinning weaponry to keep your forces at bay, that is just not going to work against the Death Guard. It's worth noting that this movement buff is only active if you don't run or use things like activating jump packs or deep striking or that kind of thing, so you are going to feel like a relatively slow army if you want to make the most of this, but it is going to mean you are a always consistent army in terms of how far you can move and how far you can go. So I do think it is actually a very solid ability on terrain heavy boards where you could be getting disrupted by all manner of difficult terrain and scenery and ruins and all that kind of stuff. And on top of that, if you don't run or use jump packs or anything like that, you also count as stationary when you are making shooting attacks. And this is in many ways where the real power of this Legion trait comes in, letting you move and fire all of your heavy weapons without penalty rather than just relying on snapshots like other legions, so hitting on sixes. So it is going to be a huge buff to keeping your army mobile while still putting out a devastating amount of firepower from your forces. And of course, remember, this isn't just going to be a direct buff to your infantry, but also to all of your vehicles, who will now be able to fire some extra weapons at full ballistic skill as well, because remember, this isn't 40k, vehicles can't just move around and shoot all of their guns without any penalties here. I have to say, I think this remorseless buff is actually somewhat understated on the face of it. When you look at it, it kind of feels like it's not that amazing, like woo, you can just make sure you move a bit more reliably. But actually, this is going to be really, really important for playing the game, closing in on your enemy without getting slowed down, going after objectives. If you play the Death Guard, with this rule, you're going to be able to just put out so much firepower and so much damage even as you are strolling up the board and playing the game. So being able to have your guys just navigate terrain which would otherwise tie up other legions, as well as letting your vehicles essentially ignore damage results like stunned on the vehicle damage table, is going to make your army feel so much more mobile than you would maybe first expect from the Death Guard. So I do genuinely think this buff is a very, very strong one and will absolutely help you to win games, even if it doesn't seem as immediately powerful as something like +1 to wound or +1 to hit, for example. The other thing they show off for the Death Guard is their unique weapon option, the Alchem weapon type. These are essentially template weapons, so using the old Flamer template, and they are kind of meh in terms of armor pen, as you can see, but they do have the Fleshbane rule, so they will be wounding everything on 2s. And this is going to be a fantastic way to just cover a load of enemies and just kill them through sheer forced saves. If you can cover an entire squad of Marines with this, even with that 3-up armor save, you're going to be wounding so many of them on 2s that a lot of them are still going to fail their save and just die. There is a downside in that these weapons do get hot, so there is a risk of hurting yourself, but at the end of the day, these are very good alternatives to flamers and will do a lot more damage to the enemy than you might expect they would, thanks to wounding everything on 2s rather than the 4s or 3s that flamers and heavy flamers do. Overall, I think the Death Guard have a really very, very strong Legion trait, if I'm being honest. It may not look it, but it is a seriously and surprisingly strong ability in a game which is based on the old 7th edition rules. And the Alchem weapons are good. I think they're worth exchanging for flamers if you were going to take those, but they're not going to be something that you spam on every single unit every chance you get, I don't think. They are relatively short range, except the cannon of course, and the Gets Hot is going to lead to some burnt fingers on your part if you do spam them absolutely everywhere. But as always, what do you think of the Death Guard? And will you be taking Alchem weapons on all of your guys, or do you still think that things like Plasma and Flamers and Melter are going to be a better pick for their specific jobs? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me, and until next time, I'll catch you later guys.